Hello and welcome back to another episode of A Cup of Joe. Today I'm very excited. We have Dinesh on the show today. Thanks for joining us, Dinesh.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having me on your show.
So, real quick introduction on Dinesh. Dinesh is actually the Director of Digital Communications at Wärtsilä, which is a very big Finnish global marine and energy company. So, Dinesh, I know we caught up recently, and last time we spoke, we talked about doing one thing that really scares you. So post that meeting, I know you've published your first LinkedIn video. So how do you feel and what is the reaction that you've gotten?
Thanks for asking that, Joe. It's a huge weight off my shoulder. I was a little hesitant at first, but now I'm glad I published it. But it wasn't just about the video. It was about putting my personal feelings out there. About a year ago, I posted something about gratitude. And I got a lot of good feedback around it and a lot of good comments. But despite that, I cringed because I was wondering what this person would think of it or what that person would think of it. And it was a huge limiting belief. We spoke about that as well, right? So it was the same with this one at first. However, the feedback has been great. I'm learning to take all of that really good feedback in my stride. And it's a huge step forward in overcoming that limiting belief. And I've got to credit what I learned through Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi and their content, and also something amazing called the Knowledge Business Blueprint, as well as many amazing people I met and spoke to last year, old friends and new friends, you included.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I think it is a tremendous inspiration to all of those who, like myself as well, it really was fearful about putting ourselves out there, especially on video. So I think the fact that you've already taken that step is inspiring a lot of people, not only who are watching, but maybe others who are, found out about the video later on. So now that you've kind of done that, can you share kind of what is the next thing that you're going to do that scares you?
Well, I've got a few ideas packed in a notebook. It's a little notebook, but it's packed with a lot of ideas. What scares me about realizing those ideas is that they will be copied or they won't be good enough or there'll be no take-up. But I try to remind myself of what Wayne Gretzky, the legendary ice hockey player, said, that if you'll miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I've got to take that shot, right? And if it misses, then it misses. But I'll try again. So I'm going to try to realize at least one of them this year, and hopefully before the end of 2020.
Awesome. We look forward to seeing that. I think, like I said, I love that quote as well. Just go out there and do it, actually.
Yeah.
So, Dinesh, you actually have a very varied background. You've worked at Nokia, you've worked at Sony Pictures Entertainment, and now you're in a marine energy company. So what has been your biggest learning from transitioning to those type of brands to your current role?
I would say the very obvious thing was how the marketing and communications function was set up, and also, of course, the other functions in these companies. So there are very vast differences between B2C and B2B companies. However, the not so obvious thing was people's expectations of me, of the role, and of the marketing and communications function. So you can find the acceptance of the role and of the function not the same because of how it has been set up from one company to another, and also what people are accustomed to, having been in that company for many years. And when we look at industrial engineering companies or even Nordic or Scandinavian companies, people tend to stay in a company for a very long time. So their perceptions and their ideas of how marketing and communications should be run, is one way. And then when someone comes in, with new ideas, they tend to challenge it. So you just have to dig your heels in and try and bring people over to your side.
So that's a very good point. I think there's a lot of people who are in a similar situation where they're in a very more traditional industry and they're trying to maybe shake things up or introduce some new things. So any advice for those people, things that have worked for you in terms of, getting people on board, maybe those who are more traditional in their mindset in terms of accepting new ideas, new approaches?
I think experimentation is a very wonderful thing. It's a very wonderful concept, and a lot of people are actually allowing of it. And that's exactly how we've been able to incorporate a couple of new ideas. I would say even 5 years ago, our social media strategy was a little dry. No disrespect to the former social media manager, but it was. And And we try to introduce new things, more images, new types of content, more links, interviewing more people, videos and all. So with that kind of experimentation, people were able to see what social media could do for them, for their business lines, for them personally. And then we started to introduce some trainings. So that kind of experimentation and being able to show people the results helped. So the whole mantra of what's in it for you, what's in it for me, that really helped and that worked out.
Now, I think that's great advice. And I think I've seen that with other clients is like running pilots or running like little experiments to just show them a little bit what they can achieve by taking a different approach. So I love that you guys have already started doing that.
Yeah.
Now, it says in your LinkedIn profile that you are part of the global multi-channel content production team that is responsible for the development of interesting, shareable content. So maybe you could share a bit more in terms of what is your process for really creating interesting and shareable content?
Yeah, sure, Joe. It's a very collaborative process that comprises our team in communications and branding, and also representatives from the different business units, for example, energy and marine, and also our content agency. So we get together, we look at trending topics, our launches, our products and services, customer successes, global events, industry events, marketing campaigns, and so on. So when we look at all of these ongoings, we are then able to decide what kinds of content we need to produce. And all of these different activities serve as inspiration. And all of that content that is developed, whether it's videos, long-form content, infographics, and several others, podcasts as well, are then distributed via so many different touch points.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great advice. And I just finished a training about a few minutes ago. And that was one of the things that I was really trying to get across is that the collaboration in content strategy and content creation. So not doing it siloed just as the marketing and communications team, but also bringing in your partners, maybe the sales, the commercial team. And as you said, aligning on everything that's happening within, the quarter, the calendar year, whether it's new launches or new events or whatever else you're doing, and tie that back into content marketing. So it's not like misaligned. You're mapping it to everything that's going on within the organization. So I think that's wonderful advice.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree, because what we've always felt is that the content comes from the business teams. They are the ones who are out there. They're the ones who are winning the successes. And they're the ones who have got the great stories. So we tap on them very actively.
Like I said, I think that's great advice for everyone listening. And now, last time we spoke, you mentioned that you're managing kind of an employee kind of thought leadership program within the organization. So can you share more about kind of the challenges or the obstacles, as well as some of the big wins that you've achieved from doing so?
Yeah. So it has been a very interesting journey for me and my team, with a very healthy dose of fulfillment and frustrations. I'll share some of the wins first.
Okay.
We're seeing more senior executives, so executive vice president and VP level, on the advocacy platform. So I think the message of thought leadership is definitely cutting through. Then colleagues are sharing a good pool of content based on their own readings, which makes things easier on the admins. And then thirdly, our colleagues' shares are getting hits and views. So we know from the change in algorithms that people believe people. So this is definitely a win-win for them as well as then for us in the company.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, And then for the challenges, there's still this fear of control by the corporate team, which is understandable. And it's something that we have to keep dispelling, to tell them we're not trying to control what you're putting out. It's about addressing a fear that you may have of whether the content that you've actually seen is shareable or not. Share it with us, we'll vet it, and then we'll put it out there, and not just you, but everyone else can also share it. And secondly, sustaining our colleagues' interest. So at first, they're really interested about it. They share lots of content, but like many things, that interest tapers off. So we try to do new things to get them sharing on and on.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because there's two challenges that I had called yesterday on. The first one was around, okay, how do we get our senior leadership, or people who are, say, more traditional, not even on social media, how do we get them, to update their profile? How do we get them, involved on social media starting off? I think that's one of the first challenges. And the other challenge is, like you said, how do we sustain it? Because everyone gets very excited at the beginning. They maybe post one time, and then a couple months go by and there's nothing. And it's like, it's kind of a missed opportunity. So how do you kind of tackle those two challenges? Like I said, the first is around getting maybe senior leadership or people who have been in the organization for a while. How do you get them on board with social? And two, like you said, how do you maintain that momentum? Because it's a very big challenge in a lot of organizations.
Yeah, we have to keep refreshing that strategy, and we have to try to do new things. So gamification is a wonderful way, rewarding our colleagues or the best performing colleagues or the best performing posts, and trying to get colleagues to see the value in that. So by showing colleagues that their posts are getting lots of views, lots of shares, that more and more people are seeing it, and then when they start to get LinkedIn invitations in return, for example, right? So it's a great way for people to see that what they're doing is not going to waste, but rather instead it's bringing in good value, not just for them but also for the company. And then secondly, also making it easier for the colleagues. I think that's one of the problems that we've seen. While we know that the platform is very easy to use, I think people want easier access to that information. So my team and I are considering, for example, not just putting that information out there on that platform, but even extracting it and putting it on an internal social media sharing platform and telling people, these are the posts that we've published this week, go ahead and share. Or we might provide some other stats around some of these stories. So by adding new elements to the platform and to the stories that we have published, we hope people will continue getting excited by them and will continue to share.
So I think two really good points that I wanted to highlight again, one of which was around showcasing them what it can do for not only the company, but also their kind of their personal brand. Like I said, the number of views they're getting, the shares, the invitations they're getting, just showcasing that on a regular basis can help motivate someone, individually. And obviously it helps benefit the organization, but you kind of have to tick both of those boxes, which I think you're doing. And the other was around kind of, maintaining it through like gamification and things like that. So I think, like I said, I'd love to catch up again and find out how this is doing, because I think a lot of organizations want to do this, but they really struggle. So I'm glad that you've already started thinking through like the process and it's starting to work out for you guys.
Keeping fingers crossed.
Now, when I was doing research for this interview, I realized there's not a substantial amount of resources when it comes to marine and energy marketing. It's not really talked about too much. So where do you really turn for inspiration or tips on the industry, especially when it comes to communications, digital, and marketing?
Yeah. Well, you can go out and spend $15,000, $20,000 on a white paper, and you can do that multiple times in a year, or you can go after the lowest hanging fruit, which is the industry, our colleagues, and our customers. So all of that information and that knowledge is actually available. So we try to develop content in a prudent manner. It's about going to the right places and developing the content and using the right tools and technologies to distribute that content. We have noticed also over the years that the tech stack is getting more and more complicated. And however, the resources are not infinite. So we just have to choose a few tools or programs and go with them. And if we're not satisfied with them, then we try something new.
Okay, I think that's a very good point. I think a lot of times people look outward for inspiration or ideas. But I think to your point, you guys go internally a lot of the times and speak with maybe your colleagues or some of the different stakeholders to find out their thoughts, maybe some ideas and different approaches. I think that works particularly well for a rather niche industry where there's not a lot of players. So there may not be like a large amount of external information. So just tapping the internal knowledge base that you guys have is a great way, like you said, to come up with that content and then obviously find the right channels to distribute it.
Exactly. And we have colleagues all around the world who are in touch with the niche the segments that we participate in, and all of those discussions with the customers, all of those customer successes, the new wins that they have. So when we're able to tap on our colleagues, tap on the industry, and tap on the customers as well for success cases, for example, we're able to get just the kind of content that the industry wants to hear, and potential customers want to read about.
I love that. I was just saying those exact words, like I said, about 15 minutes ago in training, that, the best content really comes from the people who know your audience And that really boils down to, interviewing your customers, your sales team, the people who are on the front lines, dealing with them on a regular basis, and then developing content off the back of that, because that's where you get the most effective and engaging content.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, it'd be good to find out more about you on a personal level. So what really, inspires you on a day-to-day basis?
Many things, ideas, people, and what has really touched me over these last couple of years is how giving people are, of their time, of their encouragement, and how they do it without agenda. For example, a couple of years ago, I wanted to do a deeper dive into the nitty-gritty of paid social. A friend of who runs a digital marketing agency called Construct Digital invited me over to his agency and assigned one of his colleagues to me to take me through Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, advertising and their platforms. What did he get out of it? Nothing. But what did I get out of it? A lot. So that's just one example. And then last year, as part of some volunteer work that I'm doing for Shine Children and Youth Services, I put out a note to get some help to revamp their social media strategy. And two friends stepped forward and spent many hours developing the social media strategy, the social media calendar, and also developing some guidelines, for Shine. And lastly, people, and their very generous feedback and applause, as I've experienced with my first video. So all of this is really inspiring, and it's what's driving me forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. And I think the couple points you brought up is really the concept of giving. I think whether you're, a leader, you're a marketer, just giving without expecting anything in return can be extremely rewarding in itself. And not only that, but just taking the opportunity to ask people. I think that was something I was always fearful with for most of my life. It's just asking for advice or asking for help because I assume that, people would think that, oh, I don't know something. But it's one of those cases that we're not expected to know every single thing. So I think that, taking that first step and asking people who are perhaps more knowledgeable or more experienced about a particular topic, asking for their advice or insights can be a great way to not only find out more information for yourself, but build those relationships, which I found very helpful.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, like I said, I really, really appreciate you sharing all of your insights. I think the audience has learned a lot from what we talked about today. Now, how can people get in touch with you if they want to find out more about what you do and kind of follow kind of your learnings and your developments?
Well, two ways, really good. One is LinkedIn, and the second one is email. So I've got my email address here.
Oh, nice.
There you go. So either email or LinkedIn, or rather, email or LinkedIn, and that's the best two ways.
That's awesome. I need to have my own print out. I'll just steal that idea from you. Well, Dinesh, thank you so much for being on the show. I really, really appreciate you sharing your insights. It's been very, very inspirational and very valuable to myself and hopefully the audience. So thank you so much again.
Thank you very much, Joe, for having me on your show.
All right. Thanks again, Dinesh.
Have a good day.